Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode. Our Excellence at Work podcast is hosted by Brandon Hall Group's Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook.
Hi, and thank you for joining Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. I'd like to warmly welcome with me today Kelly McCrory Lynch from IBM. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you.
And Dr. Thomas Lewis, the Director of Learning Solutions at ETU. Hi, Thomas. How are you?
I am well. Thanks, Rachel.
Great to have you both here today. And today we're going to be talking about personalized learning at scale, delivering a measurable ROI. Also want to share some recognition here to both organizations. IBM has received 7 HCM Excellence Awards from Brandon Hall Group in 2022. Congratulations. And also in partnership with ETU, also received a HCM Excellence Award. Congratulations to Thomas and your team there.
Thanks.
And to share with all of you that's joining us a little bit about Kelly. Kelly leads the learning design for global consulting at IBM Consulting. She is responsible for the learning effectiveness of the newly reimagined Consulting Academy program and collaborates with business and learning stakeholders globally to implement innovative and personalized learning experiences that have business impact. With over 20 years of experience in business consulting and learning development, Kelly focuses on delivering learning solutions that advance the organization's goals and learner needs. And a little bit about Dr. Thomas Lewis. He leads the design and implementation of ETU simulations. Whether built by ETU or in assisting client authors, Thomas strives to ensure that ETU solutions are immersive and engaging while adhering to the robust architecture that will lead to powerful data insights. Thomas has over 15 years of experience in design and delivering learning training products for corporate clients and national culture and education stakeholders. He holds a PhD in multimedia education from Dublin Institute of Technology, now Technological University Dublin, where he was fully funded inaugural GradCam scholar. Congrats, or welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
So let's get started here, talking about personalized learning at scale, delivering measurable ROI. Kelly, can you kick us off by sharing a little bit about the consulting training program at IBM and why personalization is so important?
Absolutely. So first, to set some context, I'm part of IBM Consulting, which is the services part of our business. We have approximately 150,000 employees currently and growing. And the Consulting Academy, the training program we're here to talk about today, it's designed specifically for our consultants from that part of the organization. It focuses on what we're now calling power skills, those skills that deal with capabilities associated with core consulting and client engagement. So in the years before COVID, we had been evolving the program. We'd been expanding the definition of our core consulting skills, modifying our delivery approach from pure face-to-face to blended learning. But ultimately, this was largely a face-to-face program, and it was expensive to run, with a lot of our resources and expense going on travel and venue costs. But most significantly, with the program structure that we had, it was impossible for us to scale. So this was really our challenge and our opportunity. How could we take what was essentially, one of our most important training programs for the business and grow it to a scale we had not previously been able to imagine without incurring relative cost and losing the quality of the training? So COVID forced us to shift very quickly, like everyone else. And whilst we were virtualizing our curriculum, we realized this was also a good time for us to introduce even greater full-scale transformation concerning how we approach the entire structure and the delivery of the program. So we wanted to dramatically increase our participation in this curriculum from approximately 5,000 learners annual to 20 times that number. And whilst the volumes are important for increased business impact, it's equally important how we get there. And that we do that in a way that's focused on learner engagement and an enhanced ability to apply the skills for business impact. We wanted to make the content more just in time, just enough, just for me, which is the strapline we use for our program. We wanted to shift away from what we wanted learners to know to what we wanted them to do differently, and to drive towards demonstrated mastery of the content as opposed to just completion. So the skills we cover do require personal touch. They require an opportunity to practice. And the best way to do that at scale was using adaptive learning simulations. And this became the initial feature of our program, what we call our track 1, and which is open to all learners. And this is where we partnered with ETU to help us enable this huge part of the transformation. So overall, our consulting program is like a funnel with 4 tracks in it. And we're using the ETU platform and adaptive learning to achieve scale at the entry part of our program, the track 1. And then as you move further into the program and get to track 4, it becomes less about scalability and more about high touch mastery face to face. But this track 1 element is where we have used personalization and simulations to really upgrade the learning experience and increase the ability for application and learning.
Fascinating. And Thomas, perhaps can you explain what is meant by simulation in the context and give us a bit more insight into how this enables personalization and how ETU collaborated with IBM Consulting to do this or achieve it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So similarly, just to set context, within ETU, we develop first-person perspective simulations with branching narratives that are really sort of rooted in a robust data architecture. So rather than a traditional e-learning modality where we're measuring completions and maybe measuring scores, this allows us to get really granular with the data and track learners as they progress through the simulations that we build. In the case of these IBM simulations, they are full A/B. So we sort of joke that we created a series, an entire season of television in about 9 months. We just chopped it up into 1-minute segments. In the case of the IBM simulations, we worked with Kelly and her team to really look at what was in the content across the initial track 1 training and divide it up into sort of thematized, what we call swim lanes, or thematized buckets, where we could create a diagnostic simulation at the front end of each, and then additional developmental simulations to allow learners to progress, to apply those skills, and get that just in time, just enough, just for me training. The diagnostics, as I said, sit at the front end, and they put learners in realistic scenarios where they have to have those skills that they need to apply show up. It's not just about getting things right or wrong. It's not a binary answer, but it's really having them negotiate the gray areas. And with the branching narratives, that means that the decisions that they make as they are part of the story, and oftentimes leading the story, take the story in different directions. Based on how they perform, using the ETU data architecture, we then turn on and off downstream content. So what this means is that we mapped the core skills that a consultant needs based on their band or role level within the wider training. And we then look at the specific skills within individual simulations, individual streams, but also we're tracking those transversal measurements that need to be sort of measured across the entire program. The beauty of ETU then is that we can look and identify skill trends, whether that's within individual learners, across geographies, and then providing those learners with that downstream content, giving them the remediation that they need.
And looking at those trends or that data, Kelly, what impact have you seen from the use of simulation and personalization in your learning programs?
Well, it's still quite early days at the moment, because we're not fully rolled out just yet. But I would say what we've been receiving is extremely positive feedback from the learners regarding the simulations themselves. I actually wrote down some of the comments here that we've been receiving, from the feedback of learners that I can share with you, just to give you a feel of the general sentiment of how they're being received. Things like really interesting simulation. It introduces you to the real process of consultancy. It's interesting to see how the different actions, ways of approaching can have an impact with the customer interaction. I love the fact that I can debug what I got wrong so I can recoup and fix. Love the interactive nature as if we are in person, very useful in a remote working environment. Best course I've ever taken in my 9 IBM years, things like that. So we're getting a lot of very positive feedback from our learners, which obviously is a big plus for learner engagement. So that's the first thing that we're seeing. And we're also in the early stages of calculating seat time savings. It's too early to give a final outcome on that yet, but the initial data that we have is showing up with an average learner time saving of about 25%, which is significant.
That is great. It's the both the the increase there and the feedback, the positive feedback. What else are you hoping to see as the program becomes fully rolled out?
So once we've had a sufficient deployment period, we'll start to benchmark across the various return on learning data points that we'd expect to monitor, such as the impact on employee retention, the rate of promotion, employee engagement, learning hours, and importantly, we'll seek to track the impact of this training on application within the business and for our clients. So that'll be the really interesting and exciting piece to understand. And also of interest for us from our data analysis of the learner performance within the simulations, such as Thomas was just referring to there, will be a targeted identification of skill and capability gaps. So for our learning organization, this will be really useful to enable us to develop and deploy targeted learning interventions where they are most needed, whilst being efficient with our time and resources.
Sure. And is this available to all employees at IBM, or what particular functions or groups is this targeted for?
So as I said, sort of the start, so I work in IBM Consulting. So it's that part of the organization that we are primarily targeted for. Now we've got about 150,000 employees at the moment in IBM Consulting. That ranges, of course, from graduate hires right up to exec level. This program deals specifically with you could say, the senior consultant, which would be the level after graduate, right up the senior managing consultant, which is the level just before partner. You get into the associate partner stages, so quite high in the organization. So we deal with that group, and this training program is going to be available to everyone within that target area.
Okay, that's great, and especially it's the work that you're engaged in is can be very complex. So to be able to have this type of resource available, and it seems like it's embedded and not just it doesn't just happen at different times. It can happen at any time that they need it, based on kind of what you're seeing as far as the personalization for it.
Absolutely. I think a big shift that we did with the program as well, from before COVID, when the program was really a 6-week blended learning program, where we have moved the program now to is one that actually is there to sustain a learner through their time in band, through their time in, whether, they're a senior consultant and they are a senior consultant for 3 years or more, that the Consulting Academy will be there for them. Now, obviously, the different elements that they take, are timed depending on where they are in their band. So I think that's been a huge shift for us and indeed for our learners.
Right. I can imagine. And another question that I have for both of you, the personalization and skill measurement you mentioned, which is applied to track 1 of the consulting learning program. Where do you see this going next?
So for us, early 2023 will see us complete the rollout of our track 1 program. to all the geos and all the levels of learners that our program is intended for. I mentioned that we have the 3 groups from senior consultant to managing consultant to senior managing consultant. So at the moment we've rolled out to senior and managing consultant, but by the end of Q1, we will have rolled out to the senior managing consultants as well. So, it's effectively a third of our target group still has to get the program. So early 2023, we'll see us complete that. And of course, complete the sunsetting of the previous program, which, is still going on a little bit as we have some folk tailing off their learning there. And the next focus, and we've already started to work on this actually, on the architecture for it, will be introducing adaptive personalization at our next level, the track 2, which is currently our LVC, our live virtual classroom element. So how a learner performs in track 1 will inform what they then need to do or not do, as the case may be, at the track 2 level. So that'll be huge. Okay. So we started with adaptive learning at track 1 and we're taking that into track 2. And then thereafter, as we look to deploy the final stage of the program, the specialized face-to-face masterclass element, for the learners that progress onto this track 4 stage, they'll be able to use their personalized journey to guide their focus and to help make their selections regarding where they're going to spend their time.
Okay, great. And Thomas?
Yeah, just to pick up on what Kelly is saying there, absolutely. I mean, the beauty of the ETU simulations is that there's such a thick data story that comes out of every learner's personalized learner journey. And with that, then, as we feed into additional tracks, IBM can then use that data to earmark potential high achievers, earmark remediation. And we've discussed as well the opportunities. As we said, this is going to be with the learner across their time in band. So potential plug and play ability for additional remediation, timed and spaced learning based on performance. So the intention is that while these sit at the front end of that foundational training for them when they are new to role, that there might be additional value adds to these simulations, further in their learning as well.
It's really good for that performance consulting piece where you have, tangible insights as to what their needs are or gaps are. So I see that can be really helpful. And that's a big struggle, I think, for managers or learning professionals to be able to have that information and to be able to provide that feedback, and not just to reprimand or to demotivate, but to help encourage and to help foster their growth.
Absolutely. Something else that we're also doing, the next step, and we've started working on this already with ETU, is to introduce translated simulations. So, we have, obviously this is a global program, and we have learners from all over the world that are consuming this learning, and it's in English. We wish we could have it in every language, but that's the practicality of that. Just isn't just here for us right now at the minute. But we have started with one of our geos, Japan. So we have started to actually translate the simulations into Japanese, and the plan is, we're sort of in the middle of that process at the minute, but the plan is that we'll be able to launch our senior consultant track 1 by the end of January in completely Japanese, and then our managing consultant by the end of February. And then of course, they'll also come on board with the senior managing consultant capability training in Japanese as well. And we have other geos that are also interested in looking at this, and looking at getting their natural language availability to the simulations. It's something we do anyway for Japan, for China, with our self-paced modules. We translate those at their request, but this is a huge thing, to do this in the simulation. So effectively, we're using full video, we're using actors in these simulations. The actors won't be dubbed. They'll still speak in English, but anything that is text, all of the subtitles, all of the learner decisions, all of that element will be in Japanese when we're finished with the first round.
And it's been a partnership, I think, of both process and technology. As we have created or recast this in the first target language, we've updated what we do within ETU to make sure that subsequent languages will be that much more quickly to translate, both with the current state content and, as Kelly alluded to, into the simulations moving forward as well.
Yeah, I think it's a learning process for both of us. So it's new. We're very new to this, and it's certainly been interesting, and really looking forward to seeing that roll out for our Japanese learners and receiving their feedback on it as well.
I'm sure that there's a lot of integral parts or nuances that you're learning from a localization or cultural perspective. It's not just translating the language, but there's all those cultural pieces that you have to take into consideration. And what I'm sure you're learning a lot of lessons along the way. What are some things that you can share or challenges that we might learn from?
Do you want me to go first, Thomas?
Sure, go for it.
So I was asked this same question actually very recently by another part of our business who are also considering, introducing adaptive learning and personalization to their program. And for me, there are 4 big considerations to really think about at the start. There's lots of things we've learned along the way, but I think, if I was to summarize what's the 4 big things to think about, for me, the very first thing is, of course, what is the skill or the behavior gap that you want to address with this learning? That's crucial. And importantly, what does great look like? It's one thing knowing what the gap is, but you need to know what really good looks like in that area. And this information is what will form the basis of your learning narrative. And, if you're doing the simulations, it'll form the basis of your simulation story. So that's really important. Based on that, based on what you're trying to cover, the skill and behavior gaps you're trying to cover, who are the subject matter experts that you need to involve and have work with you through the process? And this will need to be a mix of both learning subject matter experts and, importantly, business subject matter experts. So the folk from the business will be paramount to helping you build the program that is relevant and targeted for the right skill gaps. We've, when I think to all of the folk that we have included in this particular program, what we've done so far, I have a list of about 100 folk from the business who are all very senior, who have, dedicated their time. Thomas has got to know a lot of them very well, who've dedicated their time, coming and sitting on our design sessions, giving the benefit of their experience. They've been reviewing the scripts, when we put them out there. So really having that close contact with the business and your SMEs is very, very important. Also, you need to think about the medium for your content delivery. We made a design decision quite early on, actually, to go with full video, which is not necessarily what you might need for your program. So I think you've got to think about that. The reasons we went down the route that we did was because, well, one, the content that we're covering, we really needed for it to feel as real and personable as possible. And secondly, our anticipated scale for business impact warranted the investment for us. So, they were some of our key reasons, but of course that's something you really have to think about, because it does impact your timeline, it impacts your budget, it impacts, quite a few things along the way. And finally, but definitely not of least importance, you need to consider what data you're going to want to collect from this, and importantly, what you're going to be able to do with that data. So I think that would be some of the key things from my perspective.
Yeah, and from a design perspective, just picking up on what Kelly said, and Rachel, the observations you made about translations, that list, 100 SMEs long, is reflective of the fact that this is a global program. There is cultural nuance. So we really needed to thread the needle and make sure that we are telling stories that are learning assets that will be beneficial to these learners and how skills show up in ways that are universal, but also specific enough that they're going to land with IBMers, regardless of where they're seated. So, really getting that blend right with an awful lot of eyes on this has been something that we've needed to keep front of mind. And with that, then, making sure that that these, which are very immersive simulations, really feel authentic. And I think we've succeeded in that. And all of the hardware that IBM and ETU have taken home on account of this project, I think speak volumes to that. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Kelly, both for sharing your insights and joining me today from Ireland. I could be here in Florida while we're chatting with both of you in another country. So it's our new normal, right? And then I think it's great.
Yes.
It brings us all together and lots of opportunities to share. And I think what you're doing, and the community as well, has recognized you for your achievements. So good luck for what you have in store for the future. And I look forward to connecting again as you continue your progress. Take care. Have a great week.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, Jill.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye, Thomas.
Bye. See you.